I was at the community swimming pool with my father and older sister by 3 years. My sister and I had been playing in the water but were told we needed to come out for 15 minutes for an adult-only swim. I didn't understand why we had to get out, because there weren't very many people there, and the pool was plenty big for us to stay in the water while the adults swam. But I obeyed. Our towels were by the deep end, so while my father swam and my sister sat, I was looking into the water thinking I could probably jump in hard and sink straight down to the bottom, and as soon as my feet touched, I could push myself back up and grab the side of the pool and pull myself out. I wasn't sure if that would work, but before I knew it, I had jumped in. The second I jumped, I heard my sister yelling for my father, which was a good thing because it didn't go as planned. I started spinning and had no control. I was taking in a lot of water because I wasn't holding my breath, but was just frustrated with not being able to stop the spinning. I kind of woke up at the bottom of the pool and felt so relieved that the spinning had stopped. I felt really good and totally in control of my movements, and I was able to swim now. Didn't think at all about breathing. I thought I should probably go back up to the top and pull myself out as I had planned, but as I was heading up, I could see my sister standing by the side of the pool looking down at the ground and not at me, and my father and others were doing something on the ground. The first thing that entered my mind was that they must have seen that I could swim now and was doing fine, so they were busy with something else. But then I became curious about what they were all looking at, so I decided to go up and take a look. As I was heading up, all of a sudden, to my left, there were people under the water. It looked like a living nativity scene. I was shocked seeing them there and found the colors of their clothing to be so vivid, making them look completely out of place. I just stopped and stared, trying to make sense of what they were doing there. They were all looking down as if in a play, waiting for someone to yell, "Action." I was focused on Mary as she was first, and wearing the most intense colored blue robe. I assume baby Jesus was there in the manger, but I don't recall seeing him. I know I saw a man in brown holding a shepherd's staff, but I didn't look closely at anyone other than Mary. Then she lifted her head and smiled at me. I was suddenly filled with so much love and felt like I was so very important. It was the best feeling I had ever had. I smiled back at her, and it was as if I knew her. I just wanted to be with her and started moving towards her, when suddenly it felt like I was being yanked out of the water, and I took a huge breath, and I was on the side of the pool with my sister and father. My father was standing by the fence, and my sister was close to me. I looked around because I had no idea who had just pulled me out of the water. I felt confused and realized my father was angry with me. He looked like he had tears in his eyes. My father never got mad at me, but he was telling me I was so selfish and saying other things that I can't remember. I didn't understand because just a minute ago, he didn't seem to even care that I was in the water. When my father was done scolding me, I looked at my sister, who was glaring at me with her hands on her hips, but then her face softened, and she asked me if I had been scared. I looked around to make sure my father wasn't near, then I shook my head no, and told her it was really fun. Then she yelled at me and told me I better not do it again. When we walked back home, we talked about other things, so I was relieved that my father seemed to be back to his old self again. But as soon as we got into the house, he went directly to my mother and told her that he thought he'd lost me and was agitated all over again. My mother quietly talked to me later and told me that I had upset my father and better not do anything like that again. Later that week, we went to my uncle's house and my aunt was asking me a lot of questions. She asked if I saw Jesus, but she held up a statue of a grown Jesus, so I said no. Then she asked me to point at who I saw, so I pointed at a nativity scene, and she said, "Oh, baby Jesus? You saw baby Jesus?" Then looked at my parents and said, "So she died." My dad got super upset again, and that was the last time it was ever brought up, other than one time years later when my dad and I were watching TV, and he said to me that if he had lost me that day at the pool, he wouldn't have been able to go on. For years, the incidents of that day didn't make sense to me. I thought that maybe when a person begins to drown, it must make them feel really good. I assumed I must have hallucinated seeing Mary and the others, and that confused me, because at my age I knew nothing about religion or death, and a nativity scene, as far as I knew, was totally associated with Christmas. So why in the middle of summer did I hallucinate a Christmas scene? My father is so mad at me it didn't make sense. He was always fun and loving and hardly ever got mad at us. I felt his reaction was over the top and not typical of him. I would think about the events of that day from time to time, but would just shrug about how it didn't make sense. One day, in the summer of 2021, my sister and I were talking about that day, and I said, I must have been groggy when I was pulled out of the water. She looked at me, totally surprised, and said, "You weren't breathing. You needed to be resuscitated." I was shocked. I would accept groggy and hallucinating, but I knew I wasn't unconscious. More confusion. Months later, I was watching YouTube videos and came across an NDE. I found it fascinating and searched for more. I watched as many as I could find. As people were explaining what happened to them, I immediately knew that what they were saying was true. Eventually, I realized that something about their stories felt familiar and started to search through the events of my past in my mind to see if I could pinpoint what was familiar. When I thought about the day at the pool, I thought that couldn't be it because I was just in the pool swimming, and it hit me that I didn't know how to swim because that's how I got into trouble in the first place. Then I realized that I never came up for air once I woke up at the bottom of the pool. What shocked me was when I realized what everyone must have been looking at on the side of the pool while I was in the water. Of course, my father wouldn't have been okay with leaving me in the deep end while busy with something else. They were busy with my body, trying to resuscitate me while I was having a great time in the water. Everything made sense. My poor father would have had every reason to be horrified. My first thought was, thank God children don't suffer when they die. Then I thought, we don't die, we just move on, and we bring our whole personalities with us. I was so much myself when I was still in the water that I had no idea I was dead. For some reason, I don't think I was supposed to see that I had died. The nativity scene stopped me from going up to see what was going on. That does it for Janice's story. Moving on to our second story of the day. I was lying in my bed while sick. I looked up, and the wall started to crumble before me. I got out of bed to run to my brother's room to tell them, but I could not wake them up. Later, I realized this was because my actual body was lying in bed. I ran back to the room and saw the wall had vanished. I could see the evening sky with a bright light and what appeared to be a man at the end of the light. The man came closer and closer until he was standing right in front of me. He told me he wanted to show me something. He lifted me under his arm like you would do a child, and we lifted off the ground at an incredible pace. We raced through the universe, where he told me every name of every planet. I could all at once understand this information, even though it was coming at me so fast. We then went to a place that seemed like the Middle East. I have traveled my whole life, and this is the closest place I can place the location. We then sat and listened to a young boy talk. Everyone was saying his name was Jesus. The speech was in a language I had never heard before, but somehow I understood. After listening to the speech, the man whisked me up again and we flew back to my bedroom. He told me he would give me this language to remember this event, as I would never believe it after I woke up. Following the event, I was so shaken. I could not get out of bed for 3 days as my legs would not walk. I tried to tell my family and friends about my experience, but nobody believed me. To this day, I can speak this language, which, after speaking with linguists, seems to be a combination of Hebrew, Greek, and Arabic. Oftentimes, I hear this same language, and I write down what I hear because I find the information fascinating. That does it for our second NDE. What did you guys think of the two experiences presented today? Do you think that the sick child saw Jesus? Do you think that the nativity scene shown in the first video stopped her from moving on to the afterlife? I can't wait to see what you all thought in the comments below. Until the next video, stay safe and continue to be blessed.